Hi, my name is Hanna, and I'm a coach, and I'm so excited to be here to share a soulful conversation. So really, thank you for being here, that I can be here. Yeah.
Sunshine, good to see you again. Had to walk out to let you back in. Stuck in a storm of a relationship. Lost my fire. Oh, and I forgot about me for way too long. But it's rolled on. Now there ain't no shade around here. Won't you leave?
It's Pearl Sharenza with Women's Successful Living and the founder of our podcast, Soulful Self-Care Conversations. I'm so excited to be on with you guys today. So sit back, grab a cup of tea, because that's my drink of the day, or coffee if that's what you enjoy. Piece of paper, because you're always going to want to take notes. But if you're driving, no worries, because we do put everything in the show notes. And today I have a very special guest. Her name is Hanna Kok, and she spent 30 years guiding people to heal through the mind body spirit connection. As an educational kinesiologist, say that 20 times, everybody, allergy practitioner, and medical intuitive, she shares the science of forgiveness to restore health and harmony. She created the I Thrive app, helping people experience lasting breakthroughs without Hear that? Without medication, hormones, or surgery. I'm so excited to have this conversation with her today because this is my jam. I love to do things as natural as we can, really being in tune with our bodies. So, Hannah, welcome to the show.
Thank you again so much for having me. I really appreciate it. It's great.
Well, I'm so
I'm
excited.
going to,
So tell everybody where you're coming in from because I always love to share that too.
I am coming in from South Africa. So I'm
Yay!
Yes, I live near a city called Port Elizabeth. It's got another name nowadays that's very difficult to pronounce. People know it as Port Elizabeth, so let's stick with that. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'm so excited to have you from way across the world here. I'm in Tampa, Florida, for those who are new to the show. And so when I do this show, Hannah, you and I spoke before, I let everybody know I don't have questions set up. This is truly a conversation, except that I do always have one question I start the show off with. And that is, I want to talk to little Hannah. I want to get to know her. What was she like growing up? What did she want to be when she grew up to be the big Hannah today? And how does that correlate to what you are doing today? So introduce us to little Hannah.
Little Hannah was number five out of six children, so it was not always easy to be noticed. That I think that's the reason why I left my family living on the other side of the world from where my family is, because I'm now not having to deal with my five siblings, although I love them dearly and I do have good contact with them. But I remember from grade one, little 6-year-old going to school, looking at the teacher, thinking, I can do a better job than her. And today I'm still teaching. Basically, as a coach, I'm teaching. I am a qualified teacher, but I didn't like the traditional schooling system and I wanted to teach about life. And that is exactly what I'm doing now.
I love that. I love that, the little girl. First of all, I want to go back. Number five. Wow. And I sat there as you were saying that I could picture little Hannah like not being noticed, like going, here I am, look at me, and I can just imagine. My mother-in-law was one of, I believe, 16. So if my family's listening, if I got it wrong, I'm so sorry. And she was sort of up there in the oldest probably six of the kids. And so she also played the mother role along with a couple of my other aunts and so forth. And I love that. I miss them, miss her to death today. She was such a dear part of my life. But I could just imagine, sitting there as a little girl and at number five. I'm the oldest of three, so I was always noticed. I was the example, you have to set the example for your brother and sister, and my brother, if he's listening to this, he didn't follow my example too closely, LOL. But I love that you share that. And then teaching, isn't that interesting? Like I find most coaches that come on the show, in some aspect or another, we wanted to be teachers growing up. That's what I wanted to be. Little Pearl wanted to be a teacher when she grew up. And for those that are new to the show, you haven't heard the story before, but I didn't have the best guidance because my parents knew nothing about going to college. So I had a great program in my high school, but after that, it just went to the wayside. But I jokingly tell my clients, well, I get to coach you today in your older age. I want to be an elementary school teacher, so I'm like, I just get you when you're older. I get to fix all the stuff that didn't get fixed when you're younger. So I love that.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
thanks for playing along and introducing us to her. So tell us, my big thing, I love what you talked about. You create the I Thrive app and the things you do around not having to be the traditional medicine route, and so I love that because I was introduced to that, I would say probably 10 years ago. And even things like we're going to have a guest on in a couple weeks that talks about thermography, things even as simple as like, thermography versus mammography and pharmaceutical versus natural medicine, that's a big thing that has changed some of the things of the way I approach my health and has made an impact on my health. Even I have a cousin that's going to come on soon. She's walking through breast cancer right now. And even her approach towards her treatment has been very non-traditional, but her doctor, which is really cool because nowadays it's hard to find doctors that are open to letting you kind of like do that natural path that you want to do. And so her doctor really bought into it, said, I'll walk side by side with you. However, if I don't like the way it's going, we're going to really hone in harder on the other side. And she was fine with that. And it's been a beautiful thing. She's done really, really well. But tell us what led you to take this path in your life.
Well, as I said, I always was interested in teaching, but I'm also interested in health. It's amazing how many doctor friends I have, but I never wanted to study medicine myself. So I've always had an interest in health and living a healthy lifestyle. But at the same time, I'm not good at people telling me what I should eat and should not eat. I don't like that. I make my own natural food choices, sorry. But to stick to a certain diet doesn't work for me. And so as I developed more the training that I had, I sort of stumbled into it, first starting with the kinesiology and later the allergy work and then the theta healing to become a medical intuitive. I became aware of how those unresolved emotions, unresolved traumas cause the problems. And when you address the trauma, the body has the energy to heal itself. So how I got into it was, as I said, I sort of fell into it. I met people that introduced me to it, but it was like coming home and I just really enjoyed it. So it was not that I had major health issues myself, thank goodness, but I do have people around me with health issues that, you know, I have an opportunity to practice on, play with, so to speak. Yeah.
I think that I like how you talk about how you sort of stumbled into it and how the diet part of the eating part, because there's some, I know here for us in the States, and I'm sure you're very aware, the high end of sugars and stuff that we have here. And everybody has a different opinion of our person right now that's in charge of the health and the health services, when it comes like the dyes and stuff that's in our food. And I'm not here to talk politics. However, I do remember years ago when I started my health journey, it was in 2008. And my husband and I were taking our kids across we were doing a trip to Italy. And I remember thinking, we were eating the pasta and things like that, because of course we're in Italy, we want the good pasta. And I remember thinking, wow, like I wasn't tired after having the pasta there. I wasn't like, my energy was really great. And when I realized it's just like, because we here in the States, we put so much stuff into our food and it's not as natural as what you can get that's, over in other parts of the world. And I think it says a lot for how we eat and what we're eating and putting in our food. And I like that, so for me, I kind of the same thing. I sort of stumbled upon it. I decided to go on this health journey. I lost over 60 pounds and I wanted to continue the journey. And I really wanted to look at, what am I eating? And it's kind of funny we're talking about this today because in the next 10 days, I'm actually launching a no filter challenge. in November. So it's going to be, you get to pick what area of your life you want to stop filtering, such as like there's women who put filters on their pictures online on, on Facebook and social media. They use the filter. And I'm like, you're a beautiful person. Like, why are you putting a filter on your face? Let's see the authentic self. But for my husband and I, we were talking about this morning as I was taking him to the airport. I was like, okay, November, I'm doing this challenge. And for us, it's going to be filtering out the sugars in our life because there's still some sugars in our life that we want to cut out, right? So my goal for November is helping people to filter out things in our life that are holding them back or not letting them be their authentic self, right? So I love that you talked about how you stumbled upon this and then the food and aspect. One of the things that I also like you talked about in your bio that we shared was that the science of forgiveness, right? I want to talk about that because we as humans, we beat ourselves up. The mindset gets so like overwhelming. The saboteur and the judge says, why are you doing that? You should know better. Blah, 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 blah. All these things we say to ourselves. I call it the not to do list. Don't talk negatively against yourself, right? Those things. So tell us about that. Like, tell us about the science of forgiveness and how you help those to restore health and harmony. Because here's the thing, we're going to go into hormones in a minute too. I'm going to bring us there because I had a hysterectomy. Let's see, my youngest is 25. So 25 years ago, I had a partial hysterectomy. And then 2 years later, almost 3 years later, I had to have a full because I still had issues with fibro tumors. But I chose to never do the hormone therapy stuff. I chose to take it as natural as I could to let my body work through the progression and not, not go to the medicine route to support it. And I'm not saying anybody listening, if it works for you, great, whatever you choose to do. But for me, I didn't want all that stuff. And the one time I did, which we'll get to in a minute, talk about hormones. I'll tell you about what happened the one time I did. But I want to talk about that science of forgiveness to restore health and harmony.
Right, because you were talking a little bit about food, but my favorite slogan around this is health is not so much about what you eat. It's way more about what eats you. So what is going on in your life that you're wrestling with? What conflict do you have? And then you want to make peace with that conflict, whatever that is. And forgiveness plays a huge role in that, in letting it go. Now, why I like to talk about forgiveness, because I've experienced for myself that I had to forgive difficult situation in my life, and I know if I hadn't done it, it would have poisoned my life. I saw people around me how they struggled with health issues because they were struggling to forgive. But I know that forgiveness, people have a certain idea, first of all, that it's like related to a religion, that it means that you now condone the other people's behavior, that you have to let those people back into your life, that you just have to forgive and forget. It's none of that. It's none of that. It's all about just accepting what happened, accepting your own role in the whole situation, and then choosing to let it go for your sake. Forgiveness is a private affair. You never have to talk to the person that you forgive. It's about you can do it yourself, and often it is about having to forgive ourselves for bringing this situation into our lives. Now, I like to talk about the science of forgiveness because people don't realize how poisonous it is to hold a grudge in many different ways. On an a physiological level, it has a huge impact because when you have when you have an emotion, a specific neuropeptide is going to start flowing through the body, linked to that emotion, and then it will link or hook onto the cell membrane. This is based on, now I, of course, cannot think of the name right now. His name will come back, but it's developed by a scientific medical doctor who figured this out. So the emotion, well, Candace Pert is one of them, and then the other one is totally elude me now. It will come back to me. Anyway, the cell membrane is now, this hormone will sit on it, or this neuropeptide, and then will trigger a response in the cell. Now, if you have a stress hormone, it will trigger a stress response in the cell. So everything goes like, danger, and and work hard, and so you wear the cells out faster. So that is one thing. The cells have a shorter lifespan. Then you have that overall, the amount of energy that you have in the body for life, you maybe have 40 units of energy, or 40% of your energy goes to your daily life, and 60% is just running the body, the immune system, the repair, the restoration, the rejuvenation, the digestive system. As I said, when you're stressed, a large part of your mental space gets consumed. You know how you just, these things mill in your head and it keeps you awake, and now you don't sleep. And so you're just milling and milling, like running on a treadmill. And now your body doesn't have the energy for the 60% that it needs for running this body. And it's like having a building. You can have all the building blocks and material and repair stuff on site. If you do not have the work is not going to get done. If you don't have the energy, because you're now so consumed with this thing that you're upset about, then the body will start falling behind the repair, and then is how you will get sick in the long run.
And so much you're saying, like I was taking notes over here. So much you're saying is so true about the forgiveness. It's a private affair. I want to go there for a second, because I remember, you know, I to those who are new to the show, I've talked about how I've divorced my parents, right? My parents are both narcissists. They're both gaslighters. At a young age, like in third grade, I learned to be a people pleaser, and no fault of my parents. It was the situation. My dad was at war in Vietnam. My mom, back then you got kicked off a base, so my mom didn't have support. So we'd go upstate to New York to stay with my granny, and my mom would work to try to support us. And at the same time, I was sort of became that parental person to take care of my brother and sister, as I shared earlier. I'm the oldest in the family. And so at a young age, I learned how to the people pleaser. So as I got older, whatever my parents wanted, whatever they needed, even in my adult life, that's certainly where I was falling. It's like, okay, I got to take care of them, whatever they want, I'll do, you know. And so fast forward, you talk about the forgiveness part. I'll talk about them for a second, and I'm going to go to my son. But I decided, because of their behaviors and things they were doing that was detrimental to me and my family, I chose to say, you know what, you can't be in my life anymore. And I've talked about how, when my parents divorced after 43 years of marriage, that whole turmoil, I was 40 some years old. I felt like a 7-year-old girl being pulled on a tug of war, and so my priest, Father Bill, was like, listen, we don't pick our parents. God picks our parents for us. We will always love them, and you can set boundaries around them. And so I chose to set the boundaries. I chose to lock a fence. When I would unlock it and let them come back in, the behavior started back up again. I'm like, I'm not doing this, because I would not allow it from my spouse or a friend or a partner. Why would I allow it from my parents? And people question me, well, they're your parents. You shouldn't do that. I'm like, so if I allow my husband to treat me the way my parents are treating me, would you want me to stay with my husband? They're like, well, no, of course I'm. So how is it any different? So I talk about how I've divorced my parents. I have forgiven them. And like you said, it's a private affair, and I that's where I'm at. And I had a conversation with my brother a couple of days ago. I'm like, listen, I'm also not a hypocrite. I have boundaries, and I've set strict boundaries. I don't want any conversation with them. However, when the time comes, I'm no longer here, I will show up for you in whatever way you need me to, because brother, and you are my brother, I want to support you. And so for me, it was so cleansing for me, because I was no longer waking up at night going, well, what if I help them do this? Or what if I do that for them? It's like, no, stop doing for them, because it's not getting anything for you. It's giving them your energy, and they're not treating the way you deserve to be treated. And so the little
Sure.
girl in me wanted my parents to love me, However, the adult in me said, hey, you've learned this stuff, you coach this stuff, apply the stuff.
Yeah. The thing is, what I found that this is how I work with things, and you listeners and yourself, you can decide if that works for you or not. People treat us the way we treat ourselves. So if I have a person that is not respecting my boundaries, I need to check how much am I disrespecting my own boundaries? How much am I just wiping everything that is important to me off the table to go and do things for other people, or I just don't do it because I'm a bit scared of doing it. And then, so if I am disrespectful of me and the things that are important to me, I invite people to show me what that looks like. So the mirror is my favorite piece of furniture, not the physical mirror, but I always check what is going on here? What can I see here? What tells me something about me? And let me focus on changing me. And I've seen amazing shifts in people's relationships and health things as well. Because if I now start taking care of me, making time for quiet time, making time to eat properly, make my own food instead of buying food, whatever it is that you exercise, when I make time for me, then people start treating me differently as well. That's how I deal with things. But of course, I'm on the other side of the world anyway. So people are not asking me a lot of my family.
Yeah. Oh
But
no, 100%. That's exactly like there's been, I gave you the short version of the long story, but there's been those instances where like, okay, and the boundaries, like I'm very big, especially as, I've gone through, I mean, I met my husband at 19 years old. He's been a blessing because he taught me communication. He helped me learn how to set boundaries and things like that. And, and I've questioned, of course, I always question myself, is this a boundary I want to keep with them? Because they are my parents, but every time I go back to and I check my, I like you just said, I check what I want in my life. I don't want the drama in my life. I don't, that's not something I want in my world. Like you said, like making my own food. I want to create the life that I want to live that's happy and harmonious. And so I do that. And, 3 years ago when we lost our son, our oldest son, Matthew, in a tragic car accident, at that time I was rebuilding a relationship with my mother. My father, he unfortunately, my oldest was adopted and Matthew was mixed race. Unfortunately, my father became very racist towards my son. And I was like, that's it. I'm not accepting that. And it didn't change. It just got worse. But with my mom, I was trying to rebuild that whole relationship with her. And so as we were doing that, my son passes away. And we were very blessed. She helped us lay him to rest the way we wanted to. I always say that. And even though we like pushed back and said, Mom, no, we don't want to take the support as far as, financial support, because we at that time knew that we wouldn't be able to just give that money back. It's not, when you're don't expect that something like that to happen in your life. And she was very insistent. No, 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 no. I don't want to do that. This is, I have this, I can do this. So when we did that, we're like, okay, like we really pushed it back against her. And she was very insistent. So we said, okay, well, then she used that 6 months later against us, and I was like, okay, it showed right back up. And that's why we were really pushing back, because we were worried it might show back up that behavior. And I just said, and then you add on there that we try to help her with health stuff. Like the doctors were saying she shouldn't live on her own. So we were willing to open up our house and, take her in because I want to take care of her. One, she's my mom, and two, part of the people pleaser me is like, take care of, she is your family member. And she was again using those things against us. So when it became a safety issue for me and my family, I was like, okay, I'm not doing this. My boundaries are, take care of me the way I want to be taken care of. And if you are not doing that and you are impeding on how I take care and create that peace in my life, I can't have you be in my life, and trust me, I mean, there's things that come up. Like my youngest son got married last year. It's like, man, it would have been nice to have them there. And, they were part of our whole journey of having kids, and unfortunately, and then I journaled over it, I prayed over it, I went to therapy over it, and they're like, does it impede on your boundaries? And every time the answer was yes, it was like, then don't let it. What when you look in the mirror, are you happy? Like you just said, I think that was one of the conversations. Are you happy with what's coming back when they come in there? Every time the answer was no. So it's like, I have to secure my peace, and
Yeah.
so that was very, I love that you talked about that too, like how we reflect, and that's not the reflection that I wanted in my life, and so like I said, it's hard because we're like we talked at the beginning of the show. We talked to our little Hannah and little Pearl, and we want that love. We want that love of a parent. And sometimes people don't know how to parent. They don't know
Yeah.
how to do that. And that's not a unfortunately, it's a sad thing, but it's just as a reality, and we have to learn how to like we said, like we've been talking about, creating those boundaries around that. And and then the forgiveness, like I have forgiven them, like you talked about, I think it was like that private affair. I have totally forgiven them. I pray for them all the time. I hope that their health stays good and all of that. I just know that unless they change and they show a really significant change, it's not a boundary I want in my piece of
Yeah.
my world, especially coming through the loss of, something I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy, of losing a child. It's like,
Yeah.
I see so much more importance of that piece of my life.
Yeah. And tell me, have you forgiven yourself as well? That what I find is what I do is then I forgive myself for inviting that person into my life, or forgiving that I have a similar behavior as they have. So the self-forgiveness is the most important part. And that
Yeah.
is something that many people forget.
I love that question. And yes, I have, because that's something I really worked on, especially like, if I move us to, I've definitely for with my parents, and especially when it comes to my son, there's so many things like, somebody said, I can't believe you are where you are today. And I'm like, it's hard work, it's hard work to get up every day out of bed and miss a child as much as we had tried to have Matthew. It took us 10 years to have, even be blessed with adopting him. And I look at it, as a blessing. We've had Matthew for 25 years. He's still in my heart. In fact, I had a crazy dream about him last night, which was hilariously funny, but I have, and I look back at that, I forgive him for his decision to the drinking and driving, which cost him his life. I forgive myself because questioning, what could I have done more? Could I done, we did everything we
Exactly.
could, right? So absolutely, that's been a big part of my grief journey, is that forgiveness piece. I'm watching my husband learning how to do that, because men, they don't really talk about much, but I see when it creeps up, and I see when he, his love language comes up. Like I'll ask him, how's your day today? And he'll go, life. And I know that when he says life, that means he's missing Matt. So I'm like, well, tell me about life today. Like, what's life looking like today? Like, I'll ask him questions to kind of help him, walk through that journey. And but 100%, like that's one of the first things I try to work on is, work through the feeling of how it feels, and then work through the feeling of forgiving myself, because I'm a big proponent of saying that life's not a remote. I can't rewind it, but I certainly can figure out what was my role, how do I forgive myself, and how do I forgive the other person.
Yeah, and especially we need to forgive ourselves when we're not perfect. Because as you said, you can maybe look at that situation with the drinking and driving, and I mean, I've had that for a while. Thank goodness my son has stopped drinking completely. But sometimes we have to admit we were not perfect. We could have done more, but it's behind us. And we need to just accept that we did the best at the time, what we could at that time. Now that we know better, we can do better, but at that time we couldn't do better. And that's okay also to admit that. Yeah.
I love that you remind us of that. And that's what I tell myself all the time, and that's also part of like what my story is talking about. We were talking earlier about the midnight wake ups and things like that. So that's why I created what's called the Shiro method. It talks about how to become stronger and setting boundaries, and learning that no is a complete sentence, and allowing our boundaries to be taken care of in a safe space. And so when we start doing that, then I talk about how our life can be happier, that we can feel less
Yeah.
stress, we can feel, more in tune with who we are and what we want, which then, leads us to becoming that empowered self, empowered to, do a podcast like you and I are doing today, empowered to share our
Exactly.
story, or empowered to tell somebody, hey, this is how you're making me feel. This is what I don't want, or this is what I will accept. And then I talk about how when we start putting those things in place, how our life is at what I call the radiant glow up. We can glow up in our life. We can start walking and doing the things that we've put on the shelf or that we want to show up differently in the world. And then really that comes back down to the original self. And that's why I always ask about the little girl and the little child, because when we come into this world, whether you believe in God, energy, spirit, whatever it is, it's already been determined what our life is going to be, but sometimes we think we got to rush it, so I'm going to go over here and do it this way, and then guess what happens? You come right back to the path that was set out for you already, and you just have to walk through it, even if it's the scariest thing in your life. Like, trust me, I never thought God would have it planned out that I will lose a child or that I would not be close to my parents, but you know what, I have to walk in it. It's scary as heck, and I have to learn that, like we're talking about, like, what was my role? How can I forgive myself? All those things so that I can continue this path that, is still to come. That some things I know what I want, some things I still don't even know what's going to be shown to me. And so,
Exactly.
yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. So now maybe what your listeners maybe don't understand is how forgiveness and hormones are linked.
I was just going to bring us to that. Yes, because that's the one thing. Because like when I did the surgery and I chose not to do hormone therapy. The one time I did, Hannah, the one time I did, I chose to do pellets, and I regret it to this day of my life that I did these pellets because I was doing really great in my health and wellness journey, and I did these pellets, and the weight and everything, the stuff that came with it, and I tell everybody, do what you want to do for your health. But after like 3 months of being on, I'm like, I don't like how I feel on this. So I want off of this stuff now. And I'm still a couple
Yeah.
years later, still paying for it. But yeah, let's talk about that.
Okay, so well, that's a good opportunity for some self-forgiveness there, right? We make mistakes, we all do. But the how it works is, have you heard of meridians? These are the energy pathways that run through your bodies. This is where the acupuncturists stick their needles in. And these are like, you could almost say that they're like the veins for your energy, your life force that runs through it. And just as you are stressed, the veins get, you squeeze them a bit, and so you have the flow is inhibited. The same effect you have with your meridians, that certain thought patterns will inhibit the flow of energy through your meridians, and other thought patterns will enhance that flow. And the interesting thing is, so we have 12 major meridians, two ones, no, 12 of them are linked then to an organ, and then two of them are what they call the centering and governing meridian. They're more your energy vessels. But one of those meridians is called the circulation sex meridian, and that is, or the pericardium, that is the heart sac, so it's linked to the heart sac as well. But the emotion that inhibits the flow of the circulation sex meridian is resentment, holding grudges. So when you hold grudges, you inhibit the flow through the circulation sex meridian, and so the production of the hormones is then inhibited. And the antidote is forgiveness. So forgiveness will enhance the flow of that. Now, another thing that happens is that, a lot of women with menopause, they go like, oh, well, I don't have the hormones anymore. Well, you don't need the amount of hormones. Well, this is my opinion. You don't need so many of them anymore because you don't have this whole cycle that you have to manage anymore. And the adrenal glands can take over production of your estrogen and I think also the progesterone. The problem is that when you are stressed, now it needs to make your adrenal hormones, your stress hormones, and so it won't have the building blocks for your estrogen and progesterone. So that's why it's very important after you've been through menopause, being it naturally or like with you through surgery, you want to keep those stress levels down. Forgiveness helps with that. Analyzing what is going on. You mentioned it yourself, dealing with emotions, being willing to sit with emotions, to feel those emotions, work through them instead of just pushing it down, and then you're just sitting on this bomb that is ready to explode, which is just so stressful, which makes everything worse.
Uh, I'm sitting here writing notes so frantically because it so goes along with everything because I can tell you like through because I chose not to do medicines with it. I wanted to be very natural. I can tell you the times that it creeped up. Like I could see in what you're saying, right? You know, like I can tell you like after I lost my son, I turned back to my eating habits and like ballooned up and the stress and everything. I can tell you that. And then like the whole circulation of sex meridian, what you're saying, like as you described, like, oh, that's why, you know, as you were walking us through it, I could picture those moments in my life where that's where it showed up. That's why it showed up because the stress level and so forth. And you know, that forgiveness. I think one of the hardest part we as women do is forgiving ourselves. You know, we've
Yeah.
we've we've grown up generationally where you know if I go back to my granny, you know, they did everything for everybody. You know, we came last, right? And then my mom was in that generation where I have to do everything, but I still have to work. So how do I do both? I can't manage both, so I'm stressed out, and overwhelmed. And now for me, you know, my generation was, well, yeah, that was great. You both did that. I want more in my life and I still want to do some of what you're doing. So how do I, you know, I come more into a balance of it, but not quite because then the guilt takes over, right? And so um what I think what I'm watching now is like my son and his wife just got married a year ago. And I'm watching them going, no, we're not going to do on that family life till we do these things we want to do, which I think is great because they're not choosing to have kids right now and then trying to figure out how we balance it. Like they're saying, let's enjoy this time together. And then we have our season of family, you know. And so I've talked to them too about when you have that season of family, don't do what I did and wait 10 years till my oldest is a senior in high school going, oh, I have to take care of who am I again, you know? And that's why most of the women that I work with are in that season of going, wow, my kids are about to go off to college or they're about to go into high school. And I've been this mom of, you know, I've worn this armor of a mom and wife, you know, and I love to help them take that armor off and learn how to be their themselves first and then put that armor on for the others. And, you know, and so I like that you took us through like it's so true, like the adrenal glands. I didn't think about that till you're like walking it. I think subconsciously I know because I'm so natural with my meds and everything like that. But, you know, and I do know stress plays a huge part of our
Yeah, yeah,
health.
absolutely. But people don't always understand why. But
Right.
now, what people don't talk about is how our thinking causes the stress.
Yeah. Let's go into that.
Because what happens is a lot of people walk around saying to themselves, I'm not good enough, I'm unworthy of health, or unworthy of wealth, or of fulfilling relationships. And so now what comes into your life, the only things you will become conscious of are the things in line with your belief system. There's so much out there, but you only see what matches your belief system. So if you have a belief that you're unworthy of fulfilling relationships, you will just attract the one jerk after the other. And that's both sides. You know, for men can attract really bitchy women, or the other way around, you know, the women. And only when we change the belief can all of a sudden we like, oh, where did those guys come from? Or all of a sudden you start being attracted to a different type of person. And that's why I created the I Thrive app, because to change a belief system is hard work, because the subconscious is so much more powerful. It runs your daily life 95% of the time, but in the absorption of information, it's even way more powerful than that. And changing it with the conscious mind by saying affirmations or something is not that successful for many people. And so by recording these I thrives, they include some affirmations, but there's also a lot of releasing of your anger, your resentment, releasing certain beliefs that you have. It's all in there. And then you start perceiving life differently because your beliefs have changed. So, yeah, it's very powerful. And my gift for for the listeners is that I have that people can get the one on self-esteem, because our self-esteem is the foundation for many things, if not everything. If we feel good about ourselves, we can make informed decisions, we can say no, we can do lots of things, even if we're scared. But if we lack that self-esteem, we're going to get stuck.
I'm so glad you touched on that because in just a minute I'm going to tell everybody how I'm going to let you share everybody how they can get those freebies. I love that you're doing that for the audience. And what I like what you said is like learning, like we talk about learning to forgive ourselves, but how we talk to ourselves. That's something that I love coaching my clients on, because if we tell ourselves, I have all the money in the world in my bank account, but I only have $1 in my bank account, like you're not believing that. But if you say to yourself, I'm going to take action today that's going to bring abundance into my life, you're telling your brain, let's look for things that are good for me, and like you said, if I tell myself I attract, I'm always attracting these people that aren't good for me, you're going to continue attracting those people. But if you tell yourself, I'm going to attract the person that can uplift me, help me be positive in my life, and those kind of things, those are the things that you're going to bring in your life. I remember, I think I've shared this before on the show, where when I was going through the stuff with my mom, I remember walking up my stairs here to come to my office. I just dropped my mom off at the airport to send her home. And I was walking up thinking, oh my gosh, I'm glad that happened to me. As crazy as it sounds, I'm glad it happened to me because I know how to process it. I'm glad it didn't happen to this client of mine, because it would have sent them down a rabbit hole, right? And so because I know, the difference between the two, it's really powerful when we start stepping into changing our way of thinking, how we attract. And I love that your app can help people do that and can help walk the user through some of this stuff. I think it's powerful how we talk to ourselves. So tell everybody, Hannah, I know our time's getting short here, but tell everybody, you're on mute, honey. Okay.
I know my dog is barking. I just
Oh, you're fine.
Mhm.
But tell everybody how they can get a hold
Yeah,
of you, how they can
yes.
get download that freebie as well.
Right. And then what I also want to say on top of that is I'm in the final stages of my book called Bitter or Better. It's The Choice is Yours. And when people sign up for the freebie, if the book is out already, they'll get the first 3 chapters for free, and with the app as well. So they will get both. And if not, if it's not out yet by the time they sign up, they will hear from me how to get it when the book comes out. And all they have to do is go to hannakok.com. That's all they have to do. And you can do, English people love putting an H behind my name, so I can forgive them for it. So I created um, two websites, the one with the H at the end of Hannah and one without. Both of them will arrive at the same place. And then, so go to hannakok.com and then it will show you, you can sign up for the iThrives. And then when the book comes out, you will also be informed. Or if it comes out, you'll get the first chapters.
I love the creativity you just did. Like, well, because those English folks, they put the H at the end. Let me just fix it right now so there's no confusion. That's positive thinking right there. It's like, okay, I know this is going to happen, so let me just address it. Right? I think that's so amazing. So this has been so much fun. I love the conversation that we had, and I wrote down one of the big things is the conflict in our life. How do we make it? How do we? It can create the peace in our life. So forgiveness is that private affair as well. So I'm so excited we touched on all of this. I can't wait for the listeners to connect with you with the freebie. We'll put everything you shared in our show notes so they'll be able to find it. But I talked to Hannah before the show and I let her know that we have our Better Questions, Better Life cards. And so I'm going to shuffle these, Hannah. You tell me when to stop and we'll answer the card that comes up. So here we go. Tell me when to stop.
Yeah.
Okay. So your card says, am I enjoying the ride? Are you enjoying your ride?
You know what? That's a good question. It's something that I have to consciously work on. That is something that doesn't always come natural for me. That's why I developed some things like the I Thrive, and I'm writing the book Bitter or Better, it's your choice, because we teach what we need to learn ourselves the most. So I'm the biggest fan of my own work. I use it all the time. And like my eye thrives, the good thing is you can play them while you're sleeping. So you don't, there's no conscious listening required. You can put them super softly on in the background while you sleep or go about your day. They will do the job. And yeah, that's what I do to make sure that I enjoy the journey and or enjoy the ride. Yes.
I love that. And I love your honesty too, because a lot of times, like, I'll come, when my clients come into me, I'll ask them, hey, what brought you to me? Why do you want to change coaches? And they'll say, because I follow you and I watch you and you're authentic. You tell us the good stuff in your life, you tell us the bad stuff in your life, you tell us how you work through it. And so if I'm going to work with you, I know you're going to be honest with me. And so you're right. We have to work on ourselves. So we teach what we learned about ourselves. And it showed up for me. Like, I started what's called our Shiro League. So every Sunday night we get together on Zoom and we talk. And as a group, it's no makeup. It's not recorded. It's just a support kind of thing. And when I created that, it was during COVID when I saw this. I called it "I need a Calgon take me away, but I can't leave my house" moment. And so when my son passed, literally some of the local girls that are in the Shiro League like showed at my door like within 5 minutes of me calling. So we never know what we need, and these things we create because there's something in our life that we've either learned or we want to create in our life. So I love that you reminded us of that. And so I'm going to say to the audience, if you've been sitting on the fence thinking about you want to write a book about what's going on in your life, or you want to become a coach, don't sit anymore. Like, do something, have that callings in your heart. Like, reach out to me, reach out to Hannah, and in the show notes we'll have all the contact information, because people learn from people, and we need to hear each other's stories so we can uplift each other. So Hannah, I want to thank you so much for coming on. I want to thank you for being part of the show, and I hope that you have a great rest of your day. And for our listeners that are here today, I want to remind you that we come into this world, we are a little tough and rough on the outside, but as you open up your oyster, you're going to find your inner pearl of greatness. And I hope you go find your inner pearl of greatness today. Oh my gosh, you guys, that was so much fun having Hannah on the show. I wrote so many notes. If you guys could just see, I have another page of notes as well. But I want you to remember what she said. Our health is like coming home. Our health is what as she shared about what you eat is also the conflict in your life. So, how are you making peace with the conflict in your life? And if you're not sure how to do that, if you're not sure how to give yourself forgiveness, as she said, it's a private affair. I would love to help you with that. All you have to go to is to wsliving.com. That's WSLIVING.com. Make an appointment with me. Let's have a cup of tea together and let's talk about how you can create forgiveness in your life. I hope you have a great day.
All clean. Why'd it take so long to